Ohio State, Tennessee, who's hosting a home game?
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Tuesday edition. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. Don't forget to subscribe, review, set that notification bell up on YouTube, all of that fun stuff. If you know how to do the podcasting, which clearly you do, you know how to make this one of the most popular podcasts out there. Hey, you know what? Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, make your first purchase. You get $20 off. That's right. Your first purchase at Game Time gets you $20 off. What a deal, man. You want to go to a game this weekend? There are plenty of really good ones to check out. Game Time has you covered. We got a big show today. There is a secret out there in the coaching industry that we will get to a little bit later in the show that you probably have not thought about, but it is coming, and it is coming very quickly. We'll do fan Q&A as we do every single Tuesday, but they have it in the locker room. They have it in programs. They have it all throughout the country. It is Tell the Truth Tuesday. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to tell the truth about what's going on in the world of college football. And the first thing we're going to talk about is a controversy that maybe you're not thinking about, at least as a top controversy in terms of the college football playoff race. I know everybody's talking about Miami, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and there is a legitimate conversation there. We talked about that in yesterday's episode of College Football Smothered and Covered. But who gets a home game? That will be decided tonight. Who gets a home game? 5, 6, 7, 8 get home games. I think you look at that 8-9 discussion, and there are two teams that are in that 8-9 discussion. Vol Twitter, this is your Super Bowl, the college football playoff. You're in it, which means you get to go nuts and show just how big and how vocal you are on these here interwebs. And you're going to be mad because tonight, Ohio State's going to be 8, Tennessee is going to be 9, and that coveted home game in the first round of the playoffs between you two will be in Columbus and not Knoxville. And that's the way it should be. I'll be honest, that's the way it should be. Ohio State has a better resume. Now, recency bias could play into this. It shouldn't, and I think it won't in the eyes of the committee, but we just saw Ohio State lose to a Michigan team that can't pass at home. And that is a rivalry that Ryan Day simply cannot get over. Can't get over that hump. So that's the recency bias in all this. Tennessee has a bad loss too. Is it as bad as Michigan? Probably not. Arkansas on the road, tough place to play. Comparable team. They can actually move the ball through the air, though. So I would say in terms of bad losses, Ohio State has a worse loss. But it also has better wins. Tennessee got smoked at Georgia. Granted, it was on the road. Tennessee has a good win, obviously. Alabama. Where's Alabama going to be? They're going to have a number next to their name. Or they're going to be 12, 13, 14, 11, whatever. So it's going to be a good win. But it's not what Ohio State has. Ohio State has the road win over number, 3 Penn State? Number 4 Penn State? Whatever it is. They have a win over Indiana. That matters. Does it excuse a loss to Michigan? No. But Ohio State also has, I would say, a more acceptable loss to Oregon instead of Georgia. So that matters. That matters a lot. And this is a discussion that when we write our post-game stories, post-playoff ranking stories tonight, and we do our shows tomorrow morning, It might not be the top bullet point because the headline will be, and I think it should be, the last spot. Miami, South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss. You can even throw some other teams in there. Brett Bielema's lobbying for Illinois. Eli Drinkwitz is sort of getting into that mode for Missouri because they do have valid arguments. If you're going to use the big three in the SEC, Illinois and Missouri actually have some comparable arguments on their resume as well. So that's going to be the top talking point. But that battle for the 8 and 9 spot is so big. It's enormous. Because that could be the difference. We're talking about two incredibly difficult places to play. The Horseshoe or Neyland Stadium. Now, of course, Michigan would argue that the Horseshoe's not that difficult. We know that. Well, they think it's easy. Clearly, Michigan has no problem. Other teams don't. And we've seen Tennessee on the road struggle. It's the truth. Now, we also know that Ohio State is Jekyll and Hyde. They lost on the road at Oregon in a big game. They did win at Penn State in a massive game. Are they going to be rattled by the folks at Neyland Stadium? There's a possibility. But Vol Twitter and Buckeye Twitter, two of the most loud, some would say obnoxious. I disagree. But two of the most, look, both of those fan bases, very passionate, very good on the internet. Very good. In terms of internet anger, I would put Tennessee and Michigan at the same level, Tennessee and Ohio State at the same level as Michigan, and believe it or not, Arkansas. Arkansas Twitter, man, they get after it in a huge way. But that's a secondary storyline in tonight's rankings that I hope you're paying attention to because it does matter. It could matter a lot in terms of who moves on to the quarterfinals and beyond, because both of those teams, I think, are capable of winning national championships this particular season. Because as we've talked about ad nauseum on this show, and I've said it on SiriusXM, written it on Outkick, everybody's written it and said it, whatever. Every team is flawed outside of Oregon. So Tennessee, Ohio State, yeah, you can win national championships. Got to get over those flaws. It's easier to get over those flaws at your home stadium. Second up on Tell the Truth Tuesday. SMU is in regardless. I keep seeing this idea that if SMU loses to Clemson, which would not be a great loss considering where we are in the season, that SMU could be out. And I'm sitting here thinking, how? A, I don't think they're going to punish teams for losing conference championship games. I just don't think that's going to happen. You can't play your way into a situation where you play your way out. The exception would be if you get smoked by 50 points or you lose your starting quarterback like we saw with Jordan Travis last year, although that was a few games before the conference championship. So they're not going to punish a team. And look, I know it's the little old ACC, and maybe the committee won't view the ACC like the SEC and the Big Ten, and maybe that's true. But you're talking about an SMU team that ran the table within conference play. They have a decent loss to BYU in which they changed quarterbacks to Kevin Jennings, who is now a flat-out monster, which is a big reason why they are in the position they are. But you have to give them credit for running the table in conference play and having a pretty good loss that they adjusted to and became a better team because of. So if we're talking about SMU, they obviously would get a top 4 spot if they win, probably 3, right? If you drop them out, if they lose, that's completely unfair to what the sport is all about. You give automatic bids to conferences. You should give teams that have successful seasons institutions than anybody else in the conference. You should give them at least some of the benefit of the doubt. Now, do you drop them out of one of those 5 through 8 spots and keep them out of getting the luxury of a home game in the first round? Maybe. Maybe. Because they'd be a 2-loss team. They'd have decent losses, not totally acceptable, but pretty good losses. Would they be more deserving of Ohio State or Tennessee? They'd be in that discussion. They'd probably lose that discussion. So, yeah, you knock them down a couple of pegs. You give them a road game, but you can't knock them out. Now, what would happen is if Clemson got that auto bid, which obviously they would, then the discussion that everybody's having right now would be a moot point, because Clemson would be in there and SMU would be in there. Right now, Clemson's not in there. So if you're one of those SEC teams or you're Miami, you've got to root hard for SMU because you actually want them to be out of the discussion of those final few playoff spots. So tell the truth Tuesday, SMU is in regardless. Now, what about Miami? I find this conversation very interesting with Miami because I think we look at how Miami plays. They're not one of the best 12 teams in the country. I would argue they're not one of the top 16, 17 teams in the country. They have a record on paper that looks fantastic. Now, we all know what happened against Cal and against Virginia Tech. Should they have won those games? Probably not, but shoulda, woulda, coulda, whatever. But they're flawed, and they really haven't fixed their flaw. Their defense is an abject disaster, and it's been like that all year. Okay? So that's the knock against them. Now, here's why they're lurking. Okay? The committee is going to look at Georgia Tech and think that they're better than maybe people realize. And that's true. The problem with that mindset is that they don't have a number by their name. They're not ranked. But Syracuse will be. Syracuse will be what? 21 through 25. The AP has them at 23, I think. I don't really care about those polls. But the committee's going to look at that Syracuse team and realize, damn, Kyle McCord is awesome. In fact, he got the last laugh in the whole Ohio State letting him leave thing. And they're going to look at that Syracuse team and say, damn, look at what they did to Miami. Down 21-0 and then ran them out of the building. So they're going to be ranked. So Miami's in a situation now where the committee might have a better opinion of Georgia Tech, as it should, and also have a pretty good win. Because we can argue whether Syracuse is a pretty good team. We can argue whether they should be in the top 25. Somebody's got to be there. They've got the record, and they've got some pretty impressive wins to warrant being there. And I tell you what matters. Having a number next to a name. Miami losing to a ranked team on the road, they will not be docked as much as maybe we all think. The committee will look at that and say, you know what? Syracuse has that number, 21, 22, 23, whatever, next to their name. And Miami's loss was on the road to that pretty good team. And they have a better record than these 9-3 SEC teams. Is that enough to put them in? Not saying it's a good case, but it's a case. So keep an eye on Miami. I do feel like they are lurking. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about another fringe team that is hanging around the playoff discussion and a quarterback situation that is suddenly very interesting. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show, of course, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now at FanDuel, if you place your first $5 bet, and you win it, FanDuel, the folks over there, will give you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right. You place your first $5 bet, you win it, you get $150 guaranteed. Look, FanDuel has a phenomenal setup, right? If you get a hunch in the middle of a game, right? If you're watching a game and let's just say Monday Night Football, Buffalo gets a huge lead, but you're like, you know what? San Francisco might win the second half. You can place that bet and look at all the stats and play-by-play right there. That's all there on the same page. That's what makes FanDuel so great. Visit FanDuel.com today. And again, place a $5 bet. If you win it, you'll get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Only at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, you know what? Get that hunch. Never waste that hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Illinois, Missouri. You know what? I found it funny because I love Brett Bielema. I know him personally. He's a great dude. He's a great soundbite. Provides a great soundbite. We even tried to convince him to come out to Wednesday night karaoke one night when he was still the coach of Arkansas. It didn't work because they had to fly back to Fayetteville, but we were close. Lane Kiffin has been lobbying for Ole Miss with stats, and they're legitimate stats, as is the case with all of these teams on the bubble. They make legitimate cases. All of them can make legitimate cases. If you go back and look at Brett Bielema on X, he says to Lane Kiffin's massive list of reasons why Ole Miss should be in, that he agrees with Lane Kiffin. And then he lists all of the things that make Illinois great this year. And they're better. And they're better. Illinois has a better case than Ole Miss. It's got a better case than all three of those SEC teams. Missouri has a pretty good one too. Missouri has a legitimate case, a better one than Alabama, better one than Ole Miss. That Kentucky loss is an anchor on Ole Miss's season. So we have those three, and four if you count Miami, that are hanging around. But you have Illinois with a better case than all of them, I think. And you have Missouri with a better case than most. So why aren't they being discussed? What's the problem? Goes back to something we've talked about over and over and over again. Brand matters. Brand matters so much. They will never admit it. Subconsciously, they know. You put Alabama in there. You put Ole Miss in there. You put Miami in there. And I'd even say you put South Carolina in there because that brand has increased exponentially over the last 6 games, especially with how Lenora Sellers has played. That creates a college football playoff that is wildly more compelling than an Illinois team that nobody's watched all year, a Missouri team that was on the fringe going in to the season and kind of played its way out and kind of was on the fringe again and played its way out. You know, they should be in the discussion. Should they have that spot? Should Illinois or Missouri have that spot locked up? No, because all of these teams have legitimate cases. Personally, and we talked about this yesterday, I think South Carolina should be in. But I got to thinking yesterday, why is it just those? Why is it just those? Brett makes a very compelling case for Illinois. Eli can make a very compelling case for Missouri. In fact, can make one that's better in some aspects than the big three vying for that spot in the college football playoff. I'm fascinated to see how the committee reacts tonight, because they can easily go out there and say, yeah, you're right. It's the big three in the SEC and Miami, and that's it. And, maybe in South Carolina's the flavor of the week. And look, they should be. South Carolina's awesome. But there should also be flavors of the week outside of those. Does the committee recognize that? Or do they just go with brand? We'll see. Can you imagine what would happen if Illinois is in that mix, or if Illinois is on the verge of that final spot? Man, the absolute outrage from coaches and fans in my neck of the woods would be awesome. Next up, Auburn's quarterback situation. Obviously, Peyton Thorne is gone. Hank Brown is leaving. Holden Gardner is gone. Right now, there's only one scholarship quarterback, and that's Walker White. Of course, that will change tomorrow and will change shortly thereafter with the transfer portal. We've seen Miller Moss jump in. We've seen Caden Salter jump in. Personally, Caden Salter, let's not go there. I know folks will say, he's the best quarterback in the portal. No, he's not. Miller Moss is good. Internal clock is terrible. I don't know if Auburn's going to want to deal with that again. But I saw some folks say and criticize Auburn by saying, oh my God, they have one scholarship quarterback on the roster right now. Well, yeah. This is the day before signing day, A. And B, you're going to have backups transfer all over the place because they feel like they can start either at the Power 4 level or below that. And they can. That's why the portal exists. So do I think Walker White's going to start for Auburn? I have no freaking clue. Nobody does. Is it a big deal that Auburn has only one scholarship quarterback? No. And you people making that out to be a big deal are disingenuous clout chasers. Why? Because it's Auburn, and Auburn is easily criticized. Get over it. Don't do that. Don't be those guys. We'll take a break. We'll talk about a coaching mindset that you're probably not thinking about. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. The show brought to you by Game Time. You want to go to the SEC championship game, Big Ten championship game, Big 12 championship game. You might want to go to Charlotte and check out SMU versus Clemson. Well, Game Time is the place for you. You get $20 off your first purchase if you download the Game Time app. And let me tell you, they've got fantastic deals for you. They've also got a fantastic setup. All-in pricing is my favorite. How many of you have gone to a ticket site and said, you know what? Oh, hell yeah, I'm going to get a $10 standing room only ticket. I'm going to stand in the home run porch. Going to find a little spot next to an open aisle. I'm going to have fun at the game. You buy that ticket and you're like, holy crap. It's not $10. It's $36. Well, Game Time doesn't do that. All-in pricing shows you exactly what you're going to pay every single time. And that's the way it should be. Download the Game Time app. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. That's right. Go to Game Time, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Man, this week, championship week, you know that it's game time. Okay, we didn't include this in Tell the Truth Tuesday because, quite honestly, a lot of you don't really care about this sort of thing right this very second because we're all sort of wrapped up in conference championship game week and college football playoff rankings and all that stuff. But there's a secret around the coaching industry that really hasn't been discussed, but you're going to see it very soon. And I'm talking about the calendar. Signing day this week, portal officially opening Sunday, got all this stuff happening all at the same time, right? We've talked ad nauseum about how it needs to be fixed, and it does need to be fixed. But how can it be fixed? Nobody has any idea as to how to make some of these ideas happen. We know what they are. Everyone can have an idea and say, hey, you know what? Only limit it to one transfer portal window or eliminate the early signing period, all this stuff. Sure, those are great in theory, but you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. All of these things, all of these different aspects of the coaching industry off the field that have been implemented, especially during this time of year, they're going to stay in some way, shape, or form. Because again, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So what you're going to see, and it's probably going to happen in the next week, week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, because signing day is so quick after the regular season, you're going to see coaches just flat out quit. And they'll come to some resolution, say, hey, you know what? The buyout's big from the school. We're going to negotiate it. Instead of $35 million, we're going to make it $17 million. And this coach is just going to walk away and say, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to deal with this crap anymore. I never get to see my family. The only day I get off during winter is Christmas Day. I can't even prepare my team for a bowl game because I've got to have 4 assistant coaches out on the recruiting trail, the transfer portal trail. That's not a way to live. And I know it's a rich man's problem, and it is. And these are rich men, right? But I wouldn't wish that lifestyle on anybody for this month, month and a half. It's not fair. And they know it. The coaching industry, people in that coaching industry know it, especially veteran head coaches. They don't want to deal with that. Nick Saban talked a little bit about that last year. We saw Jeff Hafley basically say, screw it, I don't want to be the Boston College head coach anymore. I'm going to go be an assistant with the Packers. We saw Chip Kelly say, screw it, I don't want to be the head coach at UCLA. I'm going to go work for my former understudy in Ryan Day at Ohio State. We saw Gus Malzahn this year say, okay, you know what? UCF was probably going to keep me, but I'm just going to go fix Florida State's offense instead. You're going to see a lot of that. And it's not just going to be from head coaches taking a air quote step down to get out of the hustle and bustle of being the boss. You're going to see some of them just flat out say, screw it, I'm done. Can you blame them? I can't blame them. If you can negotiate a buyout, right? If you can say, hey, you know what, School X, you might not love me anymore. I really don't love this. And it's not just the school. It's just this workplace environment, the way the industry is involved. If we don't agree with this, if this marriage is kind of rocky, even if it's not by either party's doing, let's just have a split. It's going to happen. And it's going to happen in places that might surprise you. Talk to a lot of people about this. And it's a legitimate concern. ADs know it. Assistant coaches know it. And I think what it could do, and I think what it will do, is open up the head coaching industry to former players, younger former players who recognize this new era, understand how high school prospects and transfer portal players think, and have the energy to deal with all of this. And it's going to be an adjustment. If your school has an opening, you're going to see some names thrown around. You're going to see coaches be hired where you're like, what the hell has he done? That's okay. That's okay. It's a new era. We might as well get used to it. That'll wrap it up for this edition. Hey, thank you for making this your first listen. You can always join the subtext group below where you can text me. I can text you. I'll be at the SEC Championship game this weekend, so a lot of fun stuff coming from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, RIP Georgia Dome, because the Georgia Dome was one of the best football stadiums in the world. Hey, for your second listen, go check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. We also have conference channels. They do a great job prepping you for what's coming this weekend on championship weekend. We'll talk about the college football playoff rankings in tomorrow's show. And you know what? There will be anger because there's always anger. Have a good one.